You're here, which means that you've found Spirit Crumbs, leading you to your inner light worker. I will be sharing how these tiny little hints from the universe have led me to where I am today. I hope that by hearing my story and the stories of others, you'll pick up your own spirit crumbs along the way that will lead you to somewhere magical. Thanks for coming along for the journey. Let's see where it takes us. Welcome to another episode of Spirit Crumbs. I am your host, Andrea McCallum. I am an intuitive oracle card reader and energy healer. And I'm so excited for today's episode because I am talking to one of my very best friends, Lynsey O'Donnell. Welcome, Lynsey.
Hi, friends.
Hello. And just so you know, for context, Lynsey and I have known each other for 23 years now.
I still disagree with the math on that.
I actually still think we are 23. So
Exactly.
I don't know how we were in grade 4 when we were 0.
we were that far ahead, we were overachievers.
Yes, we both were overachievers, which is a fact. But also I think we were definitely 0 and we just quantum leaped at some point. I feel like that's what happened because I'm pretty sure we're both. I mean, I just graduated from university, so
that's true. I technically did also just finish school in December of 2019. Super young.
Exactly. Yeah. So we in the 23 years that we've been alive and known each other the whole time. One of the things I love is that we both have very similar communication styles. Even though we're super different. I am a double Capricorn and a Cancer moon. And what are your sun, moon, and rising, Lynsey?
Oh, yeah. Well, to answer this question, I like to answer this question with a story because it's still it is the most hilarious thing to me.
Yes.
I had a coworker way back in the days, my job that I worked at during my first run at university.
Yes.
And she was talking about how she's crazy because she's a Gemini and that makes her crazy. And she meant it in a sort of crazy ex-girlfriend kind of energy,
Okay, yes.
Yeah. And so I was like, I'm actually a Gemini. And she immediately backtracks, right? Because you can't tell somebody else that they're crazy.
Yeah,
exactly. No. It's
oh, but you're not. It's just
it's because I'm a Gemini moon that I'm crazy. You're a Gemini sun. You're fine. Okay. So at that point, she's like, let's look up your chart. You're fine. You're fine. And fun fact, I was born under a new moon.
I'm full moon.
We look it up and sure enough, it's Gemini sun and Gemini moon. And she just looks at me and she goes, well, you're fucked. All right. Well, there we are. We've gotten there. And then fast forward 5 or 6 years, I was telling this story to a girl that I worked with at my last job at Icebreaker. And she's very, very into astrology and all about it. She's the type of person that I've had friends like this and I love it. I want to bring this to my life where you're like, I'm a Gemini. And they look at you and they go, yeah, that makes sense. What does that mean?
Is this good? Bad? I'm not sure. What did I do to you?
So I was telling her this story and she's like, yeah, let's look up your chart. So we look up my natal chart again. And sure, it wasn't even Gemini, sun and moon. It is Gemini, Pisces. I am a Gemini sun, a Gemini moon, a Gemini Mercury, which I think is Wonder Twins power happening.
Yes, absolutely.
And a Gemini Venus.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then we've got some, just to make me totally fucked, we've got some Pisces Mars, which is a contradiction in terms.
Yeah.
And Scorpio rising.
Yeah, the Scorpio rising. I think the Scorpio is where we connect on that level because for me, it's just that my 10th house is there. And because I'm a double Capricorn, career is a lot for me. And so my energy is in that a lot.
Yeah.
And Capricorn too is just intense.
I have a friend from boot camp actually. And for what it's worth to anybody else, when I say boot camp, it is not the like awful military sense. It is the like learning sense.
Yes.
Who she's a Virgo sun and a Scorpio rising. And I think like we get along, we mesh on that like Scorpio side of things. Like it brings it together.
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
she very much is like way more put together than me.
It's so funny to like the fact that we didn't know any of this when we were younger.
I know.
We just like knew we were different, had different interests, but there were like certain things that we both like to have time to just like read. We both liked to like talk until we were just like, I'm done. And like we were never the friends that were like, I feel bad just like leaving and going home. It was like,
true. Like,
it's time for me to go home now.
Goodbye. All right, cool. And like we
Yeah.
were always very comfortable. Like, I don't know, you see people all the time that are just like, I mean, I see people all the time because like I'm in fucking nerd shit all the time who are just like, oh, you don't like the things that I like we can't be friends.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like we are so different.
Like
we're very different people.
dramatically different. Like even when you think of like Star Wars.
Oh, I remember you telling me. This is just so funny to me because like I remember first of all like how amped I was to see episode 1 like when it came out.
You and your dad had your early bird midnight showing tickets.
Well, no, I wasn't allowed to see it at midnight.
Oh,
I saw every other one, but he thought him and my mom were like, you're too young to stay up till midnight to see a movie. And that remains the greatest injustice of my life.
Hold on to that one.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm bringing that one up.
Yeah.
And so we went to see it afterwards and obviously invited you.
Yes.
And I just remember, first of all, I remember you just being like bored out of your mind, like just not enjoying it. But I remember more than that, how like hesitant you were to just be like, I just like don't like Star Wars.
Like, please don't make me leave your house. I thought
I think my dad thought about it, but fortunately he loves you. How old were we when fucking episode 1 came out?
I honestly don't know. I just know that like I was already spending so much time there that it was like, I feel like your dad would have felt bad not inviting me at that point. And then it was like, should I go? I don't know.
It came out in 99.
So we were 11.
Yeah.
That checks out. That makes sense. Yeah. I feel like 11-year-old Andrea would have been like, I just don't want to tell you this.
Well, I mean, our whole relationship is based on the fact that we both like the Spice Girls. So I think it's reasonable to think that I would kick you to the curb if you didn't have all of my same interests.
Yeah, I feel like that's a pretty solid thing. Like if you were a kid in the late 90s, like, you know, Spice Girls, that's like a lifetime bond.
I think it's just like an easy litmus test. Like if you don't like the Spice Girls, you're obviously a psychopath.
I think that they should use that. Like that should be a general thing, especially for anyone who was like born at that time. Like
exactly.
Yeah, I feel like it is interesting that we're so different. And I know you have like all those Gemini placements, and like how do you feel like that affects like your personality and how you show up in the world, like in general?
I mean, obviously I'm very extroverted. One of the big things about lockdown is that it sucks.
Yeah, that's where we're very different.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't want to be alone. I don't want to do things alone. Like I can. I have before gone like to a movie by myself, but like when I try to do things alone, I just naturally pull in other people.
Yeah, collect them on the way.
Yeah, I just like I grab them. Like I was like, it's fine, I can go to a bar by myself and like sit alone. I'm independent. Yeah. And what happened was I in fact made friends with the entire wait staff. Like, such that going there was now like a social activity. I like everything to be a social activity. So like right now when it isn't, like when I'm not able to be, like I just end up not doing anything. So like I used to like work out as a social activity, and now I cannot, and it's just like really depressing. So, but in general, like I will of course try to bring people in and include people, and it's all about like communication, and you got to be quick. You got to keep up.
Yes.
It's very, I think the Scorpio comes in with like, sometimes I have like a really dry and wry sense of humor. But in general, I'm very much that like bubbly air sign. Like I'm always on the verge of laughter, sometimes in inappropriate context.
Definitely in inappropriate
Like,
context.
definitely. I find sometimes things are just funny.
I think that's another cutoff. Like, there you go. You can be like, but you can pre-screen with the do you like the Spice Girls? And then that's the next test is like,
exactly.
If an awkward moment happens and you laugh and they don't laugh, then you can be like, that's you just had strike two. So
exactly. If I'm in like the middle of sobbing and you tell me something funny, like that will immediately.
That is literally my favorite thing about you. Like, because so many times that's happened where it's been like because I also like can't like not say a joke if it comes to my head.
Right.
And sometimes it's when someone's crying and I'm like, this would be funny. And like, you are one of the people that I know I can say it to you and you're not going to be like, you are no longer my friend. You are a terrible human.
Because like, I love it when I'm just like in the middle, like the world is ending, the heavens are falling around me, like this is it, we're done. And somebody just says something funny. That's it. Like, I love you until the end of time. I will fucking die for you. Like, I need that.
Yeah, I think that's so true that it's like part of your like the ease that you have in like communication where like you appreciate conversation, you appreciate tone, you appreciate like variety in conversation. And
I just
so
want to
like
change it up all the time.
Yeah, I think
everything.
That like makes so much sense.
I think like a lot of that is the Gemini, like just Gemini in general, but I think a lot of that is also like the Gemini in Mercury.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I feel those retrogrades harder than everybody else. I'm just like,
how do you feel like that impacts you? Like, how do you feel it?
I'm a Gemini. I'm mutable. I can change. I can find a connection. If I'm like on the fence about something and I know that the people around me are on one side or the other, then like I will, assuming I don't want to intentionally antagonize them, which like most of the time I don't, sometimes I do. Like I can find common ground with anybody. I can like smile and take it. And every time I think that like these people are wrong and I want to tell them they're wrong, I also like my little brain goes like, is this the hill you're gonna die on? And there's no in between, right? It's not like you can just disagree with somebody and not agree with them like I can with you. It's just like, no, if I disagreed with them, it was the hill that I had to die on, or I just had to like go get to that point where it's just like, oh, you guys are right, I agree, but like secretly in my head I'm like, you're fucking wrong forever. And there were times where that inner voice that was like, is this the hill you're going to die on, didn't show up, or like the stronger voice was just like, absolutely it is, like I'm going to burn this place down. And I remember 3 specific times that I did that, one of the times being the time that I like fully flipped a table and like rage quit the group chat. And Mercury was in retrograde every single time.
It's so interesting because it's almost like Mercury takes away your ability to like filter. It's like, that's what the difference is for you, is like, it's like no filter time. It's
Mercury
like, but it changes the way you express yourself, right? It like flips the way you would normally process information and the way you'd normally share. And so like that makes so much sense because you are usually fairly agreeable. And it's like, even if you're arguing, you're not doing it like just to be an ass most of the time.
Right.
It's like,
I'm not a troll.
You're genuinely like, no, let's have a conversation. Let's have a debate about this. But like, I feel like for you to get, because you're not someone who I look at and I think rage. Like there's no part of me that's like, yes, this looks like someone who's filled with rage.
Right. So, this person is going to like burn our house down.
Yeah, but then that makes sense why that would only come out like during retrograde times, because like, you know, everything has changed up how we communicate. So that does make sense.
Is bad.
That's so funny. And I think too, because I was thinking about your Mercury being in Gemini and how like you have done writing and you went to school for linguistics originally. So that totally makes sense too. And now you've transitioned into tech and
Yeah.
that's still within the realm of Mercury. And like, how do you feel like that helped you with that transition?
I think the interesting thing about, and this I very much do believe is because I have Gemini and Mercury, is that like you see both sides of everything, right? And there's this idea, I'm gonna go ahead and call it a myth, but like it's helpful to some people, so let's stick with it, that you've got that like left brain, right brain, and your right brain, I think it's your right brain. Which one's the artistic one?
I think right is artistic.
Right
And
is
left
artistic.
is
Left
logical.
is like math, science. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
there's a whole other thing about that I
Yeah.
love. But the idea that like you're good at one and probably like less good at the other. And so like growing up, it was always about like how creative I was.
Yeah.
And then I took this thing that is supposed to be on the right brain, which is like language and writing and stuff, and I moved it over into my left brain because I was like, I woke up that day and chose violence, I guess.
It was probably retrograde when you decided to make that transition.
It was just like, which is what linguistics is. It's very logical, and I loved it. I thrived.
You did love it.
Yeah.
Like more than I could imagine anyone else loving it. You were like in it.
The idea that like you can look at a language and just let it be what it is. Like that was a moment for me when in first year they were like, if people correct language, if everybody's like, you can't say this, but like everyone is saying it, then it's correct.
Yeah.
Like the correct use of a language is what native educated speakers of a language use. And like, we all just have to get on board.
Yeah.
And I love that. True. And I still like, so you've taken something that seems like it's this big sort of creative nebulous thing and you've made it very logical. And there are some things that are like very logical.
Yeah.
Like what makes a sound different from another sound.
Yeah. That's a whole, oh God, I can't. I
will go on about that shit forever. I love it. But that idea of like turning something that seems very like nebulous and creative into like a much more logical pursuit, like that's what I am doing now in tech. That is a thing that I love. I love logical problem solving. I love having a puzzle. I think that like that's the Gemini. I like a puzzle.
Yeah.
But like I hate jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah, you don't like a physical puzzle. It's
I don't want that.
It's a mental puzzle, which makes sense being an air sign.
Yes.
Like trivia, like mental, like any sort of like brain teaser, any of those things. Yeah, that would like, totally fit in.
That is what tech is. And that is what we do like every day. And it's very like people expect, because like I build websites. I love it. But I have learned I am not that creative.
I think that kind of is interesting because it's a different kind of creativity. Like someone gives you a creative thing that they want made, and then you're like, how do I logically do this?
Yeah, I love having a designer. Like, tell me what you want it to look like. That's it. I'm not a visual person. I'm a very creative person, but I am not a visual person.
That makes sense.
There's through lines in everything. That's the thing that I think that every like Gemini, I think a lot of different people, but specifically Geminis, like we want different things. We want things to be like exciting and challenging, but we also will just like fall down a rabbit hole for 3 weeks and like get real into something and then be like just become weird experts on it. And like tech is great for that. Tech is still an industry where like people can be self-taught. You don't need to have a computer science degree. I don't have a computer science degree. I took a 9-week bootcamp course, as we alluded to earlier. Or there are people that like haven't even done that. They've just gone on the internet and like learned a bunch of stuff, and you can do that.
I love that.
It's wonderful.
It is more inclusive that way.
Very much so. And it's like, because it is always, there's always something new.
Yeah.
There is constantly updating things, which makes it, for me as a career, really exciting, because I know that there's never going to be a point where I'm like, well, I've learned it all.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
That's unreasonable for everything, but like, you know what I mean? When you just, you become the expert, there's never never going to be that moment for me. There's always people, like, there's so many people working on this and advancing it and just making it better. And like, the amount of times somebody will just post a thing and be like, I made this and it's great. And everybody's like, that is fucking great. Let's all use it.
Yeah.
It's wild.
I think that's great, that like perpetual learning that is so typical of like Gemini is like a really good thing when you're choosing something as a career, so that you're not going to be like, I have to get a whole new career now because I've learned it all. I've gotten to the end. I finished it. I was just wondering too, because like obviously communication is different in every like industry. And I was just wondering if there's any like specific challenges that come up around communication in the tech industry.
There's definitely, like, yes, absolutely. I think because, first of all, like, a lot of the ways that we communicate are so different, especially now. Everyone is feeling this right now. Like, we're all communicating on things like Slack or Zoom. And it's very, very different. Like, you feel like you have to say the right thing the first time. When you're on like a text medium, either on an email or Slack or anything. And that's not a pressure that we face when you're actually like talking to somebody face to face. Like, again, this is the linguistics coming out. Like, we negotiate meeting. It's very, very acceptable when you're talking to somebody face to face to just be like, what do you mean by that? Or like, I didn't catch that. Or wait, what? Like, you can just say that to people, but we don't seem to give ourselves the same leeway when we write. We still expect like that to be better. So a lot of people are struggling with that right now. Personally, I'm still fucking great at it.
You would be, naturally.
Obviously. But there's also this idea in tech of like the genius loner. And I hate it so much, but it is so real. A bunch of people, I'm gonna say men, not all of them are, but frankly, most of them are men. Come into this with shitty communication skills. And they get ahead. I went on a date with this guy. One date. It was catastrophic. But the first thing that tipped me off that like this person kind of sucks is he starts talking about, because he also worked in the tech industry. And he was like, yeah, like at my last job, I eventually had to report to the CEO because everybody else had an issue with me. And I was like, what do you,
how is that a good,
like, what do you mean? I was like, well, like, I was just really honest with people. So like, if they had a bad idea, I would just tell them in the middle of a meeting, like, that's stupid and we shouldn't do it. And I remember I looked this guy in the face, and this is the Gemini in me. I looked him in the face and I was like, it must be so interesting to be able to be an asshole and still get ahead. Because like, women can't do that.
No.
In any industry. In tech, we've spent a long time praising a lot of people who just have shitty communication skills. And we've been telling them that like, that's okay. And I don't want to say that like, if you're uncomfortable in large groups of people, or like, if you need some time to think about what you say, that like, you shouldn't get ahead. I just mean, if you think that it's acceptable to just tell somebody to their face, that's a stupid idea. Like, let's talk about that, because we need to be better at that everywhere. And tech accepts a lot more of that than I think a lot of other industries do. And then, so like, that's a big thing. I've come in fact, there are a bunch of Geminis on my team, and all of us are women or non-binary.
Okay.
And we swing in with great communication skills.
Yeah.
We're all here like, let's talk about this. Let's think it through. We got this. And we do great talking to members of other like teams, but like I have a great time talking to everybody. We get on meetings and immediately I'm just like, let's make this fun. Let's make this great. I've made a video within my first year of working there that is now a training video that like new employee, like new team members watch this to like learn one of our very specific platforms that we use for like a very specific client.
I love that.
That's like, I'm outgoing. I can talk to people. I can make things light. I can like tell somebody this is very important that we get this done by the end of the day, but also like, we're not saving babies.
Yeah.
If you don't understand something, if you think it's going to take you longer, like you just bring that up the chain. And part of that is like my management experience.
Yeah.
Is a whole other thing, but like part of it is just like I'm really good at talking to people. I love talking to people.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be the center of attention at all times. And in tech, when you do that, and this has been pointed out a lot of times by a lot of different women, in tech, when you are a woman, there are a million off ramps to tech. They will constantly try to get you to do anything that is not coding.
True.
And when you're good at communication, like I am, like a lot of Geminis are, it's just real quick. Yeah. Immediately, I was the person that everybody is asking questions of. Immediately to the like, I actually had to go to my boss and say like, I'm happy to do this. Like, I want to help people. I want them to get better, but I need to schedule time for it because I'm now not getting my work done.
Yeah.
And like, I want to help people. I want to do this, but I have to fight every single day. Like all of my managers, every day I have to be like, I want to code.
Yeah.
I don't want to not help people, but also like, this is where I want to improve. And I don't appreciate you guys trying to push me into a management role. Because like, that's not what I want right now.
Yeah.
And if you are good at communication in tech, you have to fight that every single day, especially if you're a woman.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And that's like really unfair when like you obviously got into tech for a reason. Like if you just wanted to be management, you could have done that in a number of different industries. You wouldn't have chosen
already
something.
Fucking doing it.
Well, exactly. And like you wouldn't have decided to learn something so specific if you weren't planning on doing that. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, I could totally see you being in a management role at some point, but obviously you like learning, you like the process, you like updating your skills. So I feel like that's like unfair. It's like I could totally see where they would try to do that though, because there's so few people that have those skills that like they want to capitalize on it when they have someone who is really good at that. I think this is like where we come back into like being similar, because like I also have always like been pushed into management roles because I have the aura of like a double Capricorn and Scorpio, and like I have that energy. And so even when I'm like I had only been, when I was working merchandising, I'd only been in the department I had been in for a couple months, and they were like, hey, we have this position for like an area manager for like a region for like this merchandising. Have you thought of applying? And I was like, I literally just started. I was like, no.
Like, you get shit done.
Well, the thing too is that oddly enough, part of the reason they wanted me in the role was because of my communication skills, because because of the Scorpio, I can get people to do stuff for me too, in a nice way though. Like I can, because I know how to manage the workload based on other people's skills and my own.
Absolutely. If you were in tech, they would 100% push you towards project manager. I've reached a point again, because like I talk to the other crafts, like I deal with them a lot. There's a person, one of the creative leads will just message me with like mock-ups. I'd be like, hey, is this possible? And she trusts me to be the person to say like yes or no. And like they trust me when I'm like, this is possible. And it's actually like, it's pretty difficult, but like, yeah, we could do it. Or if they're like, oh, this thing, like, oh my God, how do we handle this? And I'm like, actually, guys, this is super fucking simple. Like, let me just do it for you real quick. I'll do this in the next 5 minutes while we're on the call.
That's awesome.
I did that a lot with like one of my projects, and they were just astounded. And I felt like a rock star every time.
Well, and that's that quick wit, right? That's like quick thinking, quick processing. And I think that's like something else that like I naturally, as everybody knows from listening to this podcast up until this point, I talk really fast, I process really fast. It's just part of my nature. And I think that's also why Gemini and I like mesh so much, because we're both like, let's cut out the bullshit, just get to the thing.
You getting to the point is Gemini energy.
And I just wanted to say too, for everyone, since like Lynsey and I, part of the reason why we're still friends is that neither of us gets offended if there's like literally months or like a year when we don't talk in between. And then it's just like we pick it up like nothing happened. We both are very flexible. And I think that goes back to like communication style, where it's like we understand the underlying parts of conversations that don't exist. Like, other people have things going on, or like, if somebody doesn't respond right away, that they're probably busy. And like, we don't get offended by that. It's just like, even if like Lynsey were to like read a message and leave it without responding, I would know she got distracted by something shiny, and that she would respond when she looked at her phone and went to message me for something later.
This is a problem I have so often in my life, is that like people will text me and I'm a bad texter, and I want to be a better texter. Like I do. Yeah. I want to be, but I'm not.
Yeah.
I 100%, it's usually if I'm just like, I'm busy and I look at it and I'm like, I will deal with that later. And I put it down. Yeah. And then there is no later.
No, later doesn't exist for text messages. It's like that whole thing of like, I'll respond to you in like 3 to 5 business days is approximately my texting rate. It's like emails I actually get to more because I look at them all the time. Text messages, once they're open, they're dead. If I don't respond when I open it,
forever.
You know why? Because I also respond mentally, because I imagine the conversation in my head, like, oh, I would say this to the person. And then in my head, that has transmitted. That's like, it's telepathy. I'm like, oh, they already received this.
I explained to my mother, who is also a Gemini.
True.
I told her once about how like millennials, like we don't end text messages in periods. So if I say like, that's cool, that means it's cool. If I say that's cool, period, that means like, I'm going to burn your house down. Exactly. The period is a tonal marker. Here's the linguistics, Lynsey, again. Like that tells you the difference between like, that's cool and like, that's cool. Right? Like you're going to die.
You are dead to me.
If I put a period on that text
message. That is the period. Yeah, it is. Yeah. You are dead to me, or something of the like. But yeah, I really enjoy that we had this conversation like right at the beginning of Gemini season. We're all now starting to finally get back out into the world at a time when it's all around communication during a Mercury retrograde. So I just feel like pay attention to your communication and just be more compassionate with people. Try to have more patience in your conversations and try to use the proper emojis in order to not offend people.
Don't use periods.
Do not use periods. Yes, that is our advice for this whole episode, is do not use periods.
Gemini says don't use periods.
They are rude and unnecessary. But I really want to thank you, Lynsey, for coming on. It's been a really fun episode, and I hope that you'll come back again sometime.
Thank you so much. I've had such a great time. I mean, as you know, I love talking about myself and winning people over. So I hope I did that.
And yeah, I will be putting Lynsey's Instagram in the show notes if you do want to follow along.
It's mostly cat pictures.
Which I think is enough. You already just put the hook there. People are going to be following it just for pictures of your cat. Thank you so much, Lynsey.
Thank you for talking with me. This has been so fun.
It has. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Spirit Crumbs. You can find me on Instagram for this podcast at Spirit Crumbs, or you can also find me at Concrete and Crystals for my own spiritual offerings and more tidbits about my own journey. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.